Hi everyone, my name is Corey, also known as GRC Corey, and welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone had a fantastic holiday season. I know I certainly did. Sorry I was out for so long. I was just enjoying the holidays and I just spending time with catching up with friends and family. So I'm happy to be back. I've been getting a lot of requests to create a video guide on the practical GRC project, and I'm happy to do so. So let's just jump right into it. But before we get started, I do have a quick question. If anyone would like to see a video series. I've been thinking about doing a video series regarding the NCSR and more specifically the NIST CSF as the NCSR is based off of. And so I was thinking about really breaking down that framework and the functions, categories, and subcategories, and just really digging through what all of it means. That way, you guys have a tool and a guide of what that framework looks like, what it all means, and so you can take that with you guys to your interviews. And when someone asks you about the NIST, you guys can just truly break it down and answer any question that is thrown your way. So you don't have to feel nervous or concerned if that question comes up. So just let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see that or not. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, everybody, let's get started here. So before we get started on the practical GRC project itself, I need to break down a couple of things and give you guys a couple of side notes here, so this whole project can make a bit more sense. So once you open up the Excel spreadsheet here that I provided, there are two versions, NCSR 1.1 version and NCR version 2.0, which the NCR is based off of the NIST CSF, the cybersecurity framework, okay? And in the last video, I said to do the 1.1 version because essentially there is a new function in the NIST 2.0, the CSF, which there's just some subcategory questions you're just not gonna know. You're not gonna know. Like for example, there's GVRM1, which is Govern Risk Management 1, and it says here risk management objectives are established and agreed to by organizational stakeholders. And now, how are you gonna know that? How are you gonna know that it's been agreed to by stakeholders and that it's checked off? You're not going to know that. Like, let's say you chose Apple as your organization that you're assessing. You're not going to like go up to Tim Cook and be like, did you approve this? It's just not going to happen. So that's what I mean by there are questions in the 2.0 that you're just not going to know, so you're not going to get as good as a bird's eye view into your organization's IT risk, security programs maturity versus the 1.1. So that's the side note one there that you guys are going to need to know to do the 1.1 version, so that's what we're going to be doing today. And then also down here it says maturity levels. I need to break down the maturity levels real quick for you guys. I have been getting some comments about the maturity levels and what they mean. So let me just break down the maturity levels and essentially what they mean real quick before we get started onto the practical project itself. So down below, I state that the above maturity models show each level of an org's IT security program. The one on the left provides 2 5s, which does a good job identifying the 2 pathways an org can take. The right shows a red line. Orgs should be at or above the red line or higher. So breaking down the maturity levels, and this is what I meant by earlier in this video. If you guys want to see a series, I can break down the maturity levels in detail in a series, and so you guys can understand the maturity levels, what they truly mean, and also breaking down the NIST CSF itself, the functions, categories and subcategories, so you guys can have a better understanding of the NIST CSF. And so you guys can take that to your interviews and be like, I know what this stuff means if you're asked that question, so you have no concerns or you feel more confident in your responses and the understanding of the NIST CSF. But back to the maturity. So you have one here, which says not performed, okay? And what it says is activities, processes, and technologies are not in place to achieve the referenced objectives. So essentially what one is saying is that you have nothing in place and you basically don't even have a sticky note of a process or a policy or a procedure of what to do. That's essentially what one is saying. You got nada, zero, nothing, okay? And then moving up to 2, informally done, which means at an ad hoc level. So that means that processes, so as it says here, I'll just read it. Activities and processes may be substantially performed and technologies may be available to achieve this objective, but they are undocumented and or not formally approved by senior management. So essentially saying that it's at an ad hoc level and it sometimes is performed, sometimes it's not performed. And you might have some documents in the back with a coffee stain on it that provides that information of what to do for processes, policies, and whatever. That's what essentially 2 is saying. So still a bit shaky within your maturity, but at least you got something, right? You got the sticky note. And then documented policy. What 3 is saying right here is your organization has a formal policy in place that has been approved by senior management. So that is saying that you have an established policy in place, not standards or procedures. Okay, a policy is not standards or procedures, but you have a formal policy in place in stating your objective and your goal and what to do, okay, and what you're trying to achieve. And then moving up to 4, which is partially documented standards and or procedures. And your organization has a formal policy in place and has begun the process of developing documented standards and or procedures to support the policy. That's what 4 is. And moving up to the maturity, to the good meat and potatoes of it all, the really important stuff, is that you have 5 here, okay? And if you look to each one, you see this one here on the left, there are 2 5s, and one here on the right, which is implementation, just 1 5, which is implementation in process, okay? Now, this is a really important piece for the project to know. To know and understand 5, okay? And what is above and what is below. So what 5 says is your organization has an activity or process defined within documented policy standards and or procedures. Your organization is in the process of implementing and aligning the documentation, your policy standards and procedures, to a framework or methodology, whether it's NIST, CIS, ISO, whatever it is. You are aligning your IT security program's maturity, that's policy standards and procedures, to an actual framework, to the NIST or to CIO, to whatever framework that is that you're trying to utilize or use. Okay, that's what 5 is saying. Now, this is the important piece on the left here with the 2 5s. One says implementation and process, but the other down here says risk formally accepted. Now, what risk formally accepted means your organization has chosen to implement, chosen not to implement based on a risk assessment. Okay, so in order to be at a 5, you must have completed a risk assessment, a formalized risk assessment. Why do you say that, Corey? Well, it's simple. In order to accept a risk, you must know your risk. You can't just accept a risk that you don't know. Okay, that's not how risks work. I mean, I guess you could do that, but you'd be a terrible business, and I wouldn't want to work for you. I wouldn't want to work for a business or a company or organization that blindly accepts risks. That business is not going to last long, and it's going to fail pretty quickly. But essentially, Risk formally accepted is you have to have done a risk assessment and you have to accepted those risks, whatever that may be. Or the implementation and process. So by aligning a framework, by implementing controls to the policy, standards, and procedures, by establishing that, in order to insert a control or to utilize a control, you have to know your risks again, because you have to, in order to implement a control, you have to know your risks, because how do you know which controls you want to implement, where to implement them? Like, you have to know it goes back to risk, and you have to know your risk. And then tested and verified and optimized. And this is also very important to note in the differences between the two. Your organization has formally documented policies, standards, and procedures. And it says right here, implementation is tested and verified. And up on 7, it's the same thing, but it says here, the difference is, it says here, policies, standards, and procedures, implementation is tested, verified, and reviewed regularly to ensure continued effectiveness. So the difference between 6 and 7 is just that. It's tested and verified and regularly to ensure continued effectiveness. That means that you have an established cadence of regularly auditing your security controls, doing gap analysis, understanding what is missing for the security controls that you need to implement, and continuously improving upon that security control for improved effectiveness, and basically optimizing that process, that security control, that process, standard, procedures, whatever it is. Essentially, at my current job, I do a presentation on the maturity levels in more detail, and I break it down by cake layers. And essentially, how I explain 7 is 7 means that your cake recipe is so delicious and so good, it should be studied and utilized by other organizations. That's how good 7 is. It is optimized and at some level maybe even automated. Like, let's say, for example, you have, like, in one of the subcategories, there's a question. I'll show you. There's a question here that says, for ID, identify asset management 1, physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. So optimized at level 7, which could mean, like I said, automated on some level, could be scanning a barcode and it's automated and uploaded saying that this laptop has been given out or has been returned, and or we've received a new laptop, and we click barcode, boop, and it's now inventoried. That's what essentially 7 is saying. It's just so good and it's so optimized that other organizations should be looking towards you and should be looking towards your organization and should be studying this. That's how good 7 is. Okay. It is very uncommon to be at a 7. And if you're at a 7, that must mean that you basically must be at a 7 for at a compliance standard of some kind to be at a 7. Not saying you have to follow some sort of compliance or some sort of compliance standard or whatever to be at a 7. You can still be at a 7 without that and just be that good. But usually the organizations that I run into that are at 7 must be there because of some compliance reason, because of HIPAA or CGIS or whatever it may be. Like, for example, like the IRS, like they are going to be at a 7 on some level because they have to be. They deal with a lot of financials and information. Let me just see what time I'm at here. 12 minutes, perfect. We're making great headway. Hopefully, so far, I am making sense. But that is the maturity levels in itself. And again, just let me know in the comments if you guys want me to break down each maturity level in a separate video in more detail. And I can do so it can make a bit more sense. But that's basically the down and dirty gist of what the maturity levels are and what they mean. So to the actual project, I actually made a separate one here. So we chose NCSR 1.1 version, like I said, because it's easier. Um, Now, to the actual project itself. So, what you're doing in the actual project is you're going through all 108 subcategory questions, as you see here in the video. Um, you're going to go through each question and assign it a maturity level ranking, whether it's 1 through 7, the organization of your choosing. For this video, I chose ASU. Funny enough, I was asked in the comments about, well, what does these ones mean and what does for. I actually so the whole this funny enough is the reason why those numbers are there. It's not for an example or anything like that. I just quickly created this setup here, copied and pasted and put it onto this sheet. I actually did the practical project myself to ensure that it's doable and that it can be done by others, and it's not too hard and I could find the information easily. That's just what this is. It's me doing the project myself, and I chose a different organization, not ASU, in this video. And I went through their I went through their IT security programs maturity, and I started giving them rankings, and I got pretty darn close to their actual results, believe it or not. But that's a different matter. I don't want to like dry snitch on them. I'm not going to say what the organization was, because that would be rude. So I'm not going to state which organization it was, but just know I got pretty close, and that verification for me at least told me that this project works and it's doable, and you can get in the ballpark of the actual results of the organization that you choose. So let's get into let's go back to the project here, the guide. So the first question, subcategory question here, is identify. So you have function. So the first function is identify. The category that we're going to be talking about today is asset management. That goes from 1 to 6, and the subcategory question we're going to start with is, well, 1, asset management 1. And as you read here, it says physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. So what that means essentially is you have some sort of inventory of your physical assets, your physical devices and systems. They're inventoried. They are, whether it's by sticky note or it's optimized barcode, bloop, it's there. Now it's on layaway. Okay? So breaking down the actual process of determining a maturity level for at least this subcategory, what we're going to do is this. The one that we chose is, at least what I chose, is ASU. And I'm going to go to ASU. I'm going to go to their website, and I Googled ASU IT security policies. And this is the first thing that popped up. Like I said, public organizations, all this stuff is publicly available. Like all of it is. And so that's why I know that this project is doable, because all that information is public knowledge. It's all out there. I just typed in, like I said, ASU IT security policies, and this is what popped up. All right there for me. Okay? And so going back to IDAM 1, which was the asset management 1, which was the physical devices, we can see here it's the first thing. Access to University Technology Resource Policy. So we click that. Boom. And as we can see here, it gives us definitions, the purpose of it, which if we read through it, it says Arizona State University, ASU, provides centrally managed information, blah, 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 services and resources to employees, students, and other affiliates, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, it doesn't say, the policy doesn't say exactly like this is physical devices policy, but that's essentially what this is. Okay, so we look at the policy. ASU grants access to ASU's computing, cloud, internet, and communications resources, predominantly through the digital entities known as blah 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 user IDs. Okay, so this is mainly it's for like their cloud services and stuff like that, but this is also can include physical devices as well. So knowing that, they do have a policy. Okay, they do have a policy, and as we know from the maturity levels, so we can find it here. Where was it? That what we went over, 3 documented policies. Your organization has a formal policy in place that has been approved by senior management. So what that resource is telling us that we found, what that policy was telling us, is that they're at least at a minimum of a 3. Okay, but Corey, what happens if they're higher than a 3? What happens if they're at a 4 or 5 or beyond? Well, this is where a bit of GRC skills come into, and this is what's so awesome about this project. You're not just doing an assessment, and it's not just one project. You're developing a whole bunch of GRC skills in one project. And one of the hats that you wear as a GRC analyst is you are an investigator of sorts. You have to do research, and you have to disseminate information. Like in one of my videos, I say the critical skills necessary to be a good GRC analyst, and I lay those skills out in that video. But one of them is being able to have effective analytical skills and do research and disseminate that information. And once you understand that information, break it down and communicate this technical information to non-technical audiences. So this isn't just one project. This is a layered project. That develops multiple GRC skills in one. This is why I love this project, and it's such a great, fantastic project and resource, because it does a lot for you, and it's very practical. Anyone can do this. So, anyways, back to the project itself. We found a policy, and so that means that they're at least at a 3 here, documented policies. But let's say that they're at a 4, partially documented standards and or procedures. Your organization has a formal policy in place and has begun the process of developing documented standards and or procedures to support the policy. So let's put our investigative hats back on and actually dig through that policy that we found to see if we can find a linked standard or procedure. Okay. So this is a part of GRC, folks. Is just really digging and understanding the information that you're reading. You do a lot of writing. You do a lot of technical writing, a lot of reading, and a lot of analytical, utilizing analytical skills, and just really digging through technical information, and being able to understand that information, and breaking it down to your execs and higher, and saying, hey, want to learn how to save money? This is how you do it. I love GRC. This is so fun. But, okay, back. Let's see. Applicability. The policy applies to all users at ASU's computer. That's the policy itself. Here, resources. It says right here, ASU access to university technology resources standard. Okay. Interesting. Access to university technology resources standard. So although it doesn't say like this is the physical technology standard or whatever it is, but we can understand and utilize by reviewing the information in the resource section here and breaking it down. It says access to university technology resources standard. So I'm like, okay, access to the technology and the resources. If this is the standard for it, they must have a standard for this policy as well. and they must have some sort of procedure in place to actually give out physical, like let's say laptops, for example, to their students or faculty. And if that's the case, they must have an inventory of sorts. So just by just really digging through this policy, we found that it says right here standard. So they do have a standard of some kind. And right here, this is a bit different. It says data center access procedure. That's just to the data centers. Maybe that's like their library. I'm not sure, but they have some sort of procedure. But this is all good information. It's not exactly what we're looking for, but we can understand that it alludes to what we're looking for. And so that's enough. Oops, excuse me. Sorry about that. That's enough to tell me that they got to at least be at a 4 now, because they have a standard, they have standards, and they have procedures that's related to our policy. Maybe not quite the same or exactly what we're looking for, but it's related. So they have something there. That's the important part. And so now we've established that they're at a 4. Now this is where the information comes in of the 5 and what I explained earlier in the video, where in order to be at a 5, again, folks, in order to be at a 5, you must have completed a formal risk assessment. There has been a risk assessment completed because, like I said, you cannot accept a risk. Like for 5, for example, like right here, you cannot accept a risk you do not know, and you cannot implement a security control for risks that you don't know. Okay? So either way, there has to have been a risk assessment done. So we hit this point here where we don't know that information that they've done a risk assessment. But again, we can do a bit of investigating and do educational guesses here and say, if they've gotten that far to a 4, and they do have established policy standards and procedures, we know that for sure. So they're at a 4. I would say that they've at least completed one risk assessment on it. Okay. In order to have gotten that far to establish that the 4, they had to have done at least one risk assessment. So I would give them a 5, personally. I would give them a 5. Now, getting to 6 and 7, tested and verified. So, like it says here on this side, documented policy standards and procedures, your organization is in the process of implementing and aligning the documentation to a formal security framework and or methodology. So you're aligning it to a framework, and you're implementing, like for example, let's say CIS, and you're implementing those technical controls to account for the risks of maybe not having a formalized policy standard or procedure what we're looking for here, which is physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. So let's say you don't have an inventoried list of your physical devices and systems. So that's what a 5 is. So, or excuse me, 6. So could they be at a 6 here? Could they have tested it? Could they have done an audit? Yes, they've had to have at least done one audit. I don't know when the last time. They're definitely not a 7, okay? Because having a continuous level of testing and optimizing and ensuring continual effectiveness, that costs money, okay? To continuously do that costs money, and for a public entity like ASU, with the amount of resources they have versus the staff, they're just not going to be at a 7, and I don't see them putting in a bunch of money into ensuring that this security control is just optimized. So they're just not at a 7. We can do educational guesses here and say, why would any organization optimize the shit out of their security control of inventorying devices and just constantly auditing against that and doing gap analysis and ensuring that it can be even better categorizing and inventorying and having a list. That's just not happening. So we could take some liberties here and say they're probably not at a 7. So they're going to be between a 6 and a 5. Okay. Now, this is the part where this is a self-assessment, meaning that it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. If it's not a 6, then, I need to know it's a 6, or I need to know if they do this. Like, no, you don't, because it's a self-assessment. This isn't an audit. This isn't you need straight facts or it's wrong or no, none of that. You can take some liberties and guesswork here in this self-assessment, and you could either be more generous or you could be more strict depending on how you assess. Typically, in like questions like this, in this case, I'm a little bit more strict. This is just from my experience working in government organizations and the sector, where, excuse me, sorry about that. Where, I mean, government organizations are a bit sloppy when it comes to inventorying and ensuring that everything is up to date and inventoried correctly. They're a bit sloppy on it, and they're not continuous and up to date. So we're gonna give them a 5. Okay, we're gonna give them a 5 there. And let's actually look at my previous one. Remember, again, it's not the same agency, it's not the same organization from last time. But I'm just gonna review from the last one. Oh, 4. See, 4 or 5. So that was about right. That sounds about right. Because depending on the organization and the size of the organization and the resources they have, you're not gonna know all that information. But 5 is about right for ASU and what we found. And that's it. This is the whole project, and it's going through the 108 questions and doing that research and that utilizing that analytical investigative skills and really breaking the information down, doing a bit of guesswork and answering and giving a maturity ranking for each of the subcategories of the 108 listed on in the project itself. That's the entirety of the project, and that's what it is. But this is why the project is so useful and such a powerful, practical project that I recommend. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but for anyone to use this project, because not only is it a practical project, but it flexes a lot of GRC skills and exercises a lot of GRC skills that are necessary for the field. And this is in some cases, this is what you guys would be doing in GRC right here. If you work in the government sector, this is a part of what you'd be doing. And it doesn't have to be just part of the government sector. There's a private sector one called the CSAT. I talked about that in previous videos. It's basically like the NCSR, but this is GRC work right here. Okay, and that's why I think this is such a powerful project, and that it's worth working on. That's it for the video. If you guys have any questions or if you have any concerns, shoot me an email or send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to respond, and I'm pretty good about responding. I wasn't as good in these months of December and January, obviously, because it was the holidays, so I was a bit lacking on that. But I'm usually pretty responsive, and I'm always willing to help. That's it again for the video. Thank you guys for sticking out this long and bearing with me. Oh gosh, I know, like about 30 minutes is a long time. But thank you guys so much again, and have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.